Hey everyone, welcome to the OmniStudio series. Today's session we will cover FlexCard and how we can invoke FlexCard inside FlexCard, how we can pass data from parent FlexCard to child FlexCard. So let's get started. We are going to create two FlexCard in this session. So first one I will call it parent accounts, and then we will create one more. So here what I will do is like I will utilize a SOQL query, and it's a straightforward query. Select ID and name from account, hit fetch, and let's verify your data. Good. So let's add from here. I think that was a miss. Let's go back. Okay, now we can see our data here. So let's hit the save. Okay, this is creating a parent accounts FlexCard. So in meanwhile, let's create another FlexCard which is child contacts. Okay, and in this we are going to utilize SQL query as well. Select ID name from contact. So hit the fetch. So now we have parent and we have child. Okay, so there are a couple of ways that we can pass the data. Okay, and so this is how we will be trying. So you can see that this is a parent component and how we can access the data into child component, and we will cover all of these examples. So okay, so the first one is that there is something called data node where we will pass either record or the records. Okay? And then there is a third way that we can pass anything utilizing the attribute as well. Okay? So let's see like where we have these options. Okay, let me go back here. In the parent account, let's look for FlexCard option here. Okay, so the component that we have created, FC child context, let's look for it. Okay, you won't find it. Okay, the reason that it should be activated for the first time. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, I'll activate this. It might take few seconds. Once we are done with this, let's go back and let's refresh it. Okay, now let's look for the our child contact card, right? This is still not coming. The reason being is that there was a checkbox called is child card, right? We didn't made it true, right? And we cannot edit this and we cannot make it true, right? So this checkbox only be checked when you are creating the flex card. Okay, so now what we are going to do is like we will delete this and we will edit. Okay, I have removed that part where I was creating it, right? So, but basically I deleted the component and now I'm making this as a check. Okay, and the same process we will follow here, and we will keep it as simple as possible. Select ID name from contact. Next, fetch. Seems good here. Click on the save. Okay. Let's go back and let's look for the flex card here. No, it is not there. So let's wait until it is until it's created. Okay, so now let's activate it. So again, like be careful with that checkbox. It takes good amount of time, right? If you have built the entire component and then you forgot to check that checkbox and now you want to utilize it, right? So it's better that you check that in very beginning. Now we can say that we have this FC child context coming here. Okay, so you can see a couple of options here. So first one is the data node. This one is very important, and also how the attributes. So this is how we will be passing the data in our second or third example. Okay. So let's start with the data node, okay, and how it works. So first we have this component. Let's go and let's add few fields here. So I will add, rather than this, let's utilize this block component. Okay, and in the block component, the element name will be, let's have it as collapsible and keep the element name same, and instead of hard-coded label, let's have the account name here. Okay, and let's drag this into our block. Okay, so now we have this block, and then we have our FlexCard. Okay, so let's preview it, how it works now. Okay, and we haven't added anything right in this, so let's go back and let's deactivate it and let's add few fields so we can see the data coming from the context. Okay, so here I will have the ID and the name. Okay, so we have ID, we have name. Cool, we are good here. Let's remove the labels. We don't want the label here. Let's remove it as well. Okay, cool. So this component logically will print out all the context. So if you preview it, we can see that, and this will print out all the context that we have, right? Because our data source here says select ID name from the context. Okay, so this looks good. Let's activate it. Good, we are good here. Now let's go back and let's re-preview it. Okay, cool. So now you can see that we have accounts available. So if I like close it, you can see that we have account, and uh, this is also coming as a context, right? So this looks good, like logically this looks good because this is what you have done, right? But this is not what we want, right? We want our account, and then we want all the context inside that account. Okay, so now how this data node work. Okay, so there are a couple of options that you can see that pass the records. Okay, and one thing that is important here, that whatever data that you get from the data source, by default that comes under a property called records. Okay, it can, or you can access through this, like if you want, if you know already the index, right, it can be 0 1, right? And if you want to access one by one, right, um, that is also possible, that but that thing you won't see in here, right? So you won't see something called record, but this is doable and this will work as well. Okay, so what will happen is that in this FlexCard, it will pass the current record, right? Because FlexCard iterates automatically. Okay, but this will pass the current record into the FlexCard. Okay, so now let's see what will be our output here. Okay, so what we have done is we haven't passed any context, right? We have passed the current account, which is only one record. Okay, and this will still work. The reason being is that we have the same ID and name attribute in the both account and context, right? So account also have name and contact also have the name, right? So logically it will work, right? So if you can see that, right, we have account here, but in the child flex card, this is account ID, this is name of account. Okay, one important thing that you have noticed here is that when you pass anything through the data node here, the data source of that card will be replaced with this rather than what you have written here, right? So if I go back and in the setup, I have written this query, right? If I run this component alone, and if I run this component without passing this data node, then this data source will be considered, right? If I pass anything through this data node from the parent component, then this will get override and it will be considered as your data source, right? This is very important point. Okay, let's go back and let's see what else we have. Okay, so we tried with the record. Okay, now let's try with the records as well. And one thing that I will do is I will collapse it by default. Okay, cool. So now we are passing the records. Now rather than passing the current record, we are passing the entire array of accounts. Okay, so that means there will be two iteration, one iteration because of this flex card and another iteration inside the child card. So let's preview it. So now you can see that we have this account name 1 3 times here and then account 1 again. So if you open it, you can see that, right? The same sequence, the same data we are having here. Okay, so in this example, what you have seen that we have passed one record, okay, from the parent, and we have also passed the like array of the records as well. Okay, so that is how we can pass the data, but we want to have the context instead of the account in the child card, right? So let's go back and let's update this query, and let's have here child query select id name from context. Okay, let's click the save and fetch. Let's go to the JSON. Okay, so you can see that on directly we can access id name and then context array. A context data is stored in a context node, and then in the context node we have an array called records. Okay, so that means what we can do here is, instead of passing the all the records of the account, we will pass current account record. Okay, record means current record when it is iterating. Then from that context node, from that records node. Okay, so record, which is current account, context node, and the record node here. Okay, so let's preview it now. Okay, now let's go here. You can see this contact, and if you have seen the past like videos, there was an account that we have created, money heist, right? So I'll expand that, and then we can see that okay, this is the our account and this is our, these all are our contacts for that particular account. Okay, so this is how you can pass data like from parent to child. There are multiple ways, but the important thing here is how you can access the variables that you are getting, right? So this is the way, right? And keep that in mind. Okay, and you can do this, right? If you have seen that let's go back and record zeros contact, you can see that, right? But here the problem is that even though you iterate it for the all the accounts, but it will always send the contact from the first account, right? So if you see this, right, and so this is how it will be. Okay, so first account don't have any contact, and that's the reason that none of the accounts are getting any contact here. Okay, so that's it on this how we can pass the data node and how we can utilize the data node as a data source of the child card. Okay, now second way of passing the data, which is through the attributes. Okay, so here what I will do is I will add an attribute and I will call it account ID. Okay, and then ID. So when I do this ID, that means when it is iterating, right, when this flex card comes again here, right, current record IDs, current account record ID. Okay, I will add one more, account name, which is your name. Okay, so we have done this. Let's go back to the child record, right? So in child record, for previous example we didn't made any change, right? Because as I told you in earlier, right? Whatever data you pass as a data node, or whatever data you uh, do from the data source, right? At the end of the functionality, right? Both of them are data sources, right? So whatever we are getting from the data source, it will be stored in either record or records variable by default. Okay, and R is small here. Okay, so let's deactivate it. But now in this example, we have passing this. We are passing this as a attribute, right? So how we can access it? Okay, so what I will do here is that I will add one more text here. Okay, and then I will have this in very beginning of this, right? Okay, here how you can get the data is utilize parent, which means parent component, and p is capital here, parent dot whatever attribute you are using while passing the parameters or values like account ID, and then in bracket I will print the another attribute, which is account name. Okay, so let's go back and let's activate it. Okay, and now we will utilize that data node again here, which is over record.context.records. Okay, so now we are passing two things: data node, this will go to records for the child flex card, and let's preview it. Okay, so as you can see this, in the child card we are able to get the values that we have passed, right? And also we have the data which we have passed through the data node. Okay, so this data is coming from data node, and this is coming from the attributes. Okay, so that is one example. And then we, whatever we are passing here, we can also utilize that in our dynamic query, or we can pass as a parameter as well. Okay, so what I will do now is that rather than utilizing the data node, right, and I will utilize the query that we are having. But again, this is not a best way, right? What will happen is that uh, you have 10 accounts, then this query will run for the 10 times from the context, right? The approach that we were using previously is a good, but again, just to learn like how we can pass the data and how we can build a dynamic query here, we will utilize it. So here I will say where account ID is parent data account ID. Okay, so now we have this parent.account ID. Click on save and fetch. There is no data obviously because we haven't passed any test parameter. Okay, so let's go back and let's activate this first. So now you can see that we are not passing any data from the data node, and even though, just to be super clear here, I can remove it. Okay, and let's go back and let's preview it. So in this example, what we have done, we have removed the data node. We are just utilizing the attribute, and then in the child card, we are utilizing the dynamic query, and we are building a dynamic query for the context. Okay. So you can see that we are getting the same response here, right? So this is coming from the attribute, and now this is not coming from the data source. Now this is like from not from the exactly data node. This is coming from the SQL query from the child card, which we have as a data source, right? Okay, cool. So this is how you can build build like a parent and child flex cards, and multiple ways to pass the data, multiple ways to do the data bindings, right, through the parent child. Uh, but again, you need to choose what you want to do and what approach you want to utilize when you have this kind of situation, right? But definitely the approach that I have just told you, right, doing this way, it's not a good approach at all. But yes, you can do it if you have some certain kind of requirements, right? And instead of SQL query, you are utilizing like a data raptor, integration procedures, right? And you want to pass as a parameter, right, something like this. You have this, and then you can do the same like parent dot whatever attribute you have, right? So something like this you can do, and you can pass the value to the your data raptor or IP, right? But just to reiterate, very important thing, there is no way that you can utilize this data source and you can have the data node from the parent. That is not possible for sure. That this will be taken as a priority, and the other data source on the child card will be ignored at. So, I think that's it on how we can pass the data from one component to another component. I'll see you in next session. Thank you so much. Bye bye. And also you can find out the example that we have done in the description as a data pack, and you can have that and you can play around with it. Okay, cool. Bye bye.